Now, all Canadians are being asked to serve in their own ways. We're all being called to stand up for each other and for the Canadian way of life. So let me ask you, who's ready? Pierre, who's ready to stand up for Canada with me?
Mark Carney addressed Canadians last night for the first time as Liberal Party leader and as Prime Minister designate. His speech came after his massive victory in the party's leadership race. Carney got 85.9% of the points on the first count, dominating in all 343 ridings. Minister François-Philippe Champagne joins me now. Minister, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure.
A decisive victory for Mark Carney last night. Just under 86% of the points, just over 86% of the total votes. Were you surprised by that victory?
I think, like you said, decisive is the real world. I don't know in whether I would expect that, but certainly it's a very clear victory. And I think beyond that was really the speech, which was really more like an address to the nation. You've seen it. People have seen it at home. This was not a speech just for the Liberal convention, but I thought was really laying out his vision. You know, we're talking about fiscal responsibility, social justice, international leadership, you know, investing in infrastructure, beefing up our military, working. I like when he said it's not just about money, it's about people. You know, we've been talking so much about tariffs, it's all about money, but behind all these things, there's families, there's communities, there's workers. So I found that this was really a speech that was the right speech at the right time. You see, like, he is the leader to go to a crisis. Is that, you know, the question people watch and say, is that someone I can trust at a time where our you know, closest ally is turning their back on us? And I would say the answer is yes.
So he's pitched himself as a man who can deal with a crisis, but he's also a man who's going to have to very quickly deal with a campaign. I mean, he was pivoting that sounded very much like an election speech to my ear last night. I mean, do you think Parliament comes back on the 24th of March, or do you think we're into an election before then?
Well, my guess, and obviously he's the leader, so we'll have to make that decision. Sure. But I think we should go get a mandate quickly, in a sense that I see something you've kind of never, at least in my 10 years, I've never seen the nation more united, you know, where people are saying, stopping us at the grocery store, at the airport, and say, keep up the fight. You know, we understand this is an existential crisis we're going through. And you know, it's a bit like in an airplane. If you hit turbulence, you buckle up and you let the pilots pilot the plane. There's kind of that feeling where people say, this is like a sense of unity behind us, and say, we're with you. We know it's not easy. And, you know, people will be indulgent in a way. We had a leadership. We have a campaign. We have this threat from the United States at the same time. So some of us, like you've seen, have decided to stay in our post so that we can manage that, because you know, this is so significant that we need to be there. But people are telling us as well, keep up the good work. And yes, if we go to an election, you know, we'll earn the trust of Canadians to continue.
In a practical sense, just how ready is the Liberal Party to go right into an election? There's been a lot of turmoil, I think it's safe to say, over the past couple of months. I know some people who said they weren't going to run again, like Helena Jazik and Wayne Long. Now that Mark Carney's there, they are going to run again. So it stems the loss of some incumbency. Are you ready?
6 weeks have changed so much. I mean, even in the history of geopolitics, it's rare that you've seen 6 weeks changing so much. You know, in our lifetime, this is a new world with new rules, and you know, it's elbow up, chin up, and all that. So I think some people, like you said, who might have considered retiring or moving on to something else, say, you know what, I better be there. I better be there to defend my community, to defend my region, to defend our country. And I'm happy when I see people doing that, because, you know, we need the best and brightest at a time like that. This is, for us, it's kind of a big wake-up call. I feel sometimes a CDL moment, you know, after the war, when, you know, we had aircraft carrier, we were building ships, building plane, you know, that's where we did the locks, you know, we had the, we build industry in steel, aluminum, in the car industry. So it's kind of the rebirth of Canada, in the way, industrial rebirth of Canada. Sure. We're going to invest in ourselves. There'll be turbulence. There's no doubt about that. But I think we're going to come out of that stronger and more united and certainly more ambitious. I think yesterday, if you ask me if there was a team, was really about ambition. There was something that Mark Carney was inspiring the nation to be ambitious.
He is clearly, I mean, it's obviously a change in leadership from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney. He seemed to signal in his speech last night he'll be more of an economically focused Liberal. This is certainly something that is punctuated throughout his campaign, but still with social policy, climate, and social justice at the core of things. So it's a change there. But, you know, he has been an advisor to your government under Justin Trudeau for multiple years. It sounds like a lot of the cabinet, certainly in the short term with everything going on in the U.S., might stay in the jobs they're in. So the Conservatives are saying, this isn't really changed. This is just cosmetic. You're switching out the guy at the top, but it's exactly the same thing.
I think they're disconnected from reality. The last 6 weeks have changed the world.
But has your party really changed with this move to Carney?
With the changing world, you also need to change. When I hear people say, are you going to do things differently? Obviously, we're going to do things differently because the world has changed. And what you've heard yesterday from Mark Carney is pragmatic. You know, in politics, the worst is just to continue things that you see may not work as well as you thought. And that's what I like when you said his position on you know, removing the levy, the carbon tax that we had. Removing some of the things that we had proposed before with respect to the inclusion rate, you know, for capital gains. I think this is being pragmatic. I think you hear a leader who says, you know what, there's things that have been tried before, but we're going to change. And I think this is the kind of leadership, you know, authenticity that people are looking for. This is not like a politician who just say, oh, we've said that, we're going to do this. This is someone who say, listen, you've done a lot of things, but some of the things we need to readjust because they don't really work necessarily as good as we thought.
These are policies, though, your government and your party were defending right up until December, when Chrystia Freeland quit. And last night, we was in the room, it was striking to hear Liberals applauding and cheering the end of the capital gains inclusion rate and the end of the consumer carbon tax, when these are policies that you have run on elections and won and defended in the face of adversity.
I would say you should be comforted by that you have at least people that are responsible. You know, the worst thing is to see something and you say it might not achieve the outcome that we wanted. And I would say, David, with respect, the world has changed. Canadians at home understand our largest trading partners turning their back on us. We have to change. The worst would be to say, hey, we said we're going to do this, but the world has changed, so we're going to keep doing it. People at home change when situations change. The rules of the game have changed. So I think you're earning respect from people to be humble and to say, you know what, this was a policy when we had a set of circumstances that looked like that. Now the world has changed completely. We're going in a slightly different direction. I think this is like maturity and being pragmatic and being respectful of Canadians to say, you know what, we don't pretend to have all the answers. The world has changed in front of us, and therefore we're going to change to be in sync, because one thing, we need to remain competitive with the United States, and competitiveness includes a number of different things. Clearly, climate change is going to be key because that's the challenge of our lifetime, and there's many ways we can tackle that. But the worst, I would say, David, was just be continuing something when everything else changes, and we have to be core to our value and say what we're going to do. And yesterday, I think that's what Canadians saw yesterday from Mark Carney.
Right. So Mark Carney has held significant public office as the Governor of the Bank of Canada, the Governor of the Bank of England. He's never held elective office. He's never been a member of Parliament. He's never been a member of Cabinet, and now his first job is going to be as Prime Minister. You have seen the attacks from the Conservatives about his personal wealth. He's in no violation of any rules. He doesn't have to disclose anything until he assumes the Prime Minister's office and puts things, you know, through the ethics commissioner and puts him in a blind trust or whatever. Politically, though, would it be wise for him to disclose this in advance of those deadlines, to take that off the table during the election and show Canadians exactly what conflicts may or may not exist in his finances?
I'm not surprised that a Conservative would do personal attack. You know, I think what you see in Pierre Poilievre is the DNA of Donald Trump. You know, there's the same DNA there. Personal attack. You're going to see more, by the way. Let's not be surprised. Personal attack, a very vicious attack. Overstating things, not sticking with the facts. Don't be surprised. This is going to be the same movie or episode we saw in the United States. That's the Pierre Poilievre tactics that he's going to employ. So Canadians should be ready for that, and I think they'll be able to see that coming, because it's the same DNA there.
But you know what's coming, so why not get out in front of it? I just wonder if you think it's just in his best interest and just makes it cleaner for the electorate to come clean early.
I am very confident he's going to do everything he needs to do to be transparent. Like you said, everything is happening quite quickly.
Sure.
You know, he's being elected leader yesterday. It happened before in our history that, you know, someone who was not like a member of parliament became prime minister. There's a lot of things to be done in the next few days to prepare all that. But I just wanted to warn Canadians not to be surprised that I think you're going to see a lot of vicious and personal attack. That's kind of the U.S.-style politics that I regret, because I've seen Pierre bringing back in Canada, and I don't think Canadian wants that at a time where our nation is facing its greatest challenge. This is a time for unity. This is a time for us working together. And it's not the time for that. I mean, the last thing we want is to import American politics in Canadian politics. I see no desire for that. We've seen just a week of U.S. politics can do to our country. Let's hope that we're not going to import that in Canada.
No, I get all of that. And I'm not asking this question to suggest that Mr. Carney has broken any rules, because clearly he's in full compliance. But you see the attacks coming. You see the issue on the table. I mean, if he were to ask you for some advice on this, I mean, would you tell him, yeah, let's get this out front early and just put this issue to rest?
Like I say, I'm confident. You know, it's like hours since he was elected leader. I know that we spoke yesterday. There's a couple of things he needs to do in the next few days. And I'm very confident that he's going to do all that he needs to do in order to be in full compliance, like you said. And at the same time, managing the important business of the nation at a time where we need that kind of leadership. Yesterday, you heard about also the words that struck me was really ambition, vision, but also respect. That's another thing where we need to keep our eyes on the ball. The biggest challenge we have now is the United States. And I was on U.S. television yesterday, and I was saying that might be a time also in Washington for a reset how they want to engage with Canada. You know, You have a new leader coming. That might be an opportunity for the Americans to really say, do you really want to treat your best partner and best ally and biggest customer this way? We've seen in a week, you know, uncertainty cannot become the new certainty. Look at the markets. The markets have spoken. I think they lost hundreds of billions in the United States in the last few weeks. Leaders, business leaders have spoken. Union leaders have spoken. I think we need to get to a different place if we want to keep being competitive in North America.
But just on that point, and as a final point, Mark Carney was pretty hard in his criticism of Donald Trump and the American administration last night, right? So, like, obviously...
But he stood up for Canada.
Absolutely. I'm not saying it was wrong, but you know how Donald Trump reacts to things, right? So I know there's a chance here for a reset with the change in the Prime Minister's office and a clean slate, because there's history and baggage there between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau. Do you think it is possible for a sort of a positive reboot in that relationship right now without the tariffs dropped?
I spoke to Mark Carney. I mean, he's met President Trump a number of times. They seem to know each other in some way. I hope that we can restore that respect. Respect for our country, respect for our leaders, respect for our workers in our industry. Canada deserves respect. And I like when you said there'll be tariff until there's respect, you know, because after all, we're a G7 nation, we're a NATO partner, we're a big country. We're not like a small country you can push around. And one thing that they saw is that Canada can bite and Canada can stand up for its own and our own national interest. And I think, I hope that I don't have a crystal ball, because one thing we've learned in this thing is that a week is already creating a lot of, as one CEO in the U.S. has put, chaos and cost. So we'll be watching, but I think there's an opportunity in Washington to rethink how they engage with Canada. And I think yesterday what Canadians saw was a leader which inspired confidence. And I think that's what we need at a time like that. We don't need, partisan attacks. We don't need bickering and politics. I think people are putting that aside and say, get the job done, defend us, go fight for us, and that's what we're going to be doing.
Minister Champagne, always appreciate the time. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you, sir.
That transition will be seamless, and it will be quick. Finally, I, as you may have heard, just had a meeting with the caucus. There is tremendous energy in the Liberal caucus. As you saw last evening, this is a united party with full of energy to serve Canadians.
But has this leadership race really healed all of the cracks from the twilight of Justin Trudeau's leadership? Joining me now are three Liberal MPs who have called for Justin Trudeau's resignation. Wayne Long is a New Brunswick MP, Rob Oliphant is an Ontario MP, and joining me here in studio, Sophie Chatel is an MP from Quebec. It's good to see the three of you. Thank you for being here at a busy time. And Wayne Long, you were an early adopter of this particular movement, and you had said you weren't going to run again, but now you're back on the ballot with Mark Carney. I mean, what's the dynamic shift in Atlantic Canada from your view with these changes?
The shift is incredible. I mean, Mark called me actually the day before he put his name in the ring and asked if I would reconsider. I had a great chat with him. I felt a connection. He's transparent. He was authentic. And, you know, my former life was business, small business. So, you know, we had a good chat about things, the economy, and I really felt a connection with him. And, you know, from there, I mean, the momentum is incredible. I've not seen certainly anything in my riding of St. John, Kennebecasis, and all across New Brunswick for sure. I mean, you know, the calls we're getting, I'm being stopped in the pedway. I think the thing that encourages me the most, there's a lot of Liberals that are coming back to the party. I think a lot of us felt lost, a lot of us centrists, if you will, you know, red Tories or blue Liberals. And I really think the uptake in members and people showing some interest from Mark Carney is incredible. I mean, we saw it last night, obviously, at the convention, 86%.
Right.
Calls we had today are unlike anything I've seen really since 2015.
So, Rob Oliphant, I wonder, you endorsed Chrystia Freeland, and I mean, I was surprised by the margin yesterday. I think Chrystia Freeland was as well. I mean, 8% versus 86% is quite the gap for the two perceived frontrunners. I wonder that going into this election now with Mr. Carney, do you think he was tested enough in this? What are your thoughts on his preparedness for an election campaign that sounds like it's going to be over and done with by the end of April or the first bit of May?
Well, we had a great weekend, and Mr. Carney has come out, I think, just ablazing with energy and excitement, and I think we're ready. The results, I think, a month ago might have been a surprise, but I think in the last few weeks we've recognized that Mark has covered the country well, and he is ready and fit for purpose. And the dynamic of the uncertainty that Canadians have with respect to Trump and the tariffs and the economy in Canada have propelled him into this place at this time. And so I'm excited. For me, this, you know, I did call for Justin Trudeau to resign in December. And it was less about frustration or anger with Justin Trudeau as a person, rather it had to do with the mood of the country and no longer listening to the message we were trying to get out. So we've had an opportunity. I think Mr. Carney has a set of skills from his previous lives, several of them. And this last month, he's been on the road and he's been with challenging candidates. But, you know, our leadership campaign was a little bit dull. Because Liberals are united, and we have one message and one voice. And so I know that people thought it was a little dull. For us, that's a little bit exciting. It reminds people who Liberals are.
Well, bland works, right? As was famously said. Sophie Chatel, I mean, united now. But I mean, you were part of you were collecting signatures, right? Part of the letter effort to get the change in leadership at the top of the party. What is your sense of where things stand with what you've heard from Mr. Carney, certainly after coming to caucus today, and how quickly you'll be ready to deal with a general election?
Well, like Rob, I would say that we were responding to the mood in our riding, and people kept saying, I want change. I don't want to go back with a Poilievre government, and especially not now where Poilievre's government would be way too risky for the time we are. But I think that we were responding to that, and that's, you know, I mean, Prime Minister Trudeau was a great Prime Minister for all the years he led our party. But time has changed, and so our citizens wanted to have change as well. But the mood of the country, David, is, I would echo my colleague, is amazing. The Pontiac, Kitigan, ZB riding, I like to say it's a bit of a Canadian mosaic because we have rural English, rural French in the north, and we have multicultural. And Mark came to Chelsea, made an event where I called all those leaders in the community. And with unity, he's the man to face the challenges that Canada has right now. Trump, of course, but also major economic transition that we have. And community said one thing, He inspires trust.
So, look, he has a resume that is impressive, having led central banks in Canada and the United Kingdom. But Sophie Chatel, you've seen the attacks from the Conservatives. Even before he was officially the leader, they saw what was coming and they've responded to it. In particular, they're targeting his personal wealth, his financial assets. He's in compliance with the law as it exists. He says he'll disclose everything to the ethics commissioner, but there's a push for him to disclose it from the opposition before the election happens, before the vote. Should Mark Carney just make this problem go away and put everything on the table earlier than he has to by law to just avoid any suspicion and challenges?
I think it's a bit rich from Pierre Poilievre to attack him on that when he doesn't seek security clearance to be an effective prime minister. To me, it's a bit rich, and it's just being, partisan, and that's not what the country needs right now.
I get that argument, but he's never held elected office. Mark Carney's held public office, so he has been vetted. But this is going to be something you're going to have to deal with politically, one way or another. So, do you think, regardless of Mr. Poilievre's security clearance, should Mark Carney just do this to take it away from the Conservatives?
Well, I think, as Mark said, he will comply with all the law and have all the security clearance to enter the role of Prime Minister, and he will.
Okay, Wayne Long, do you think that will work? Because it seems the longer Mark Carney goes without full disclosure of his assets, and I'm not in any way suggesting he's done anything wrong here, it's going to keep coming up, and it's going to keep being run in ads, which are in heavy rotation on networks here like the CBC.
I think it's pretty clear to Canadians when they see the difference between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. I mean, it's pretty stark. I mean, Pierre Poilievre has spent the last 2 years basically emulating Donald Trump. He's been combative with everybody. He's been dismissive of the press. They were genuinely happy with glee when Donald Trump won. Again, like Sophie said, it's pretty rich for a guy who wouldn't get a security clearance. I mean, every leader in the House of Commons got a security clearance except Pierre Poilievre. Question is, what's he got to hide? And you look at the response to Mark Carney, obviously surging, emerging, now the leader. MP after MP comes out, carbon tax Carney. And Canadians are looking for more than that. I mean, Canada right now is faced arguably with the greatest threat to our sovereignty in our history. And the best Pierre Poilievre can do is have a press conference that has slogans, which aren't solutions. He's divisive. And, liken Mark Carney to a security blanket for the country. I think, generally Canadians are scared right now. And like Mark said last night, we are in dark times. But I think Mark gives that soothing confidence, that aura of confidence that he's been there, he's managed economies, he knows what he's doing. He's saying, look, we are going to have some speed bumps, but we can build the strongest economy in the G7. And I absolutely know that Canadians are looking for that. They're not looking for somebody to divide us. Mark Carney's the leader we need at this time. His experience backs that up.
Right. So, Rob Oliphant, I get that he's carried the day with Liberals, right? I mean, that's obvious, and he's made that argument. But if this is in any way a vulnerability, the Conservatives, they will hit this with overwhelming and relentless force and devote massive financial assets at it. So, is it okay to just say, I'm going to comply with the laws they exist, which, as everyone else has done, or just take that extra step to take it off the table?
Well, I think the issues in this next election are about trust, confidence, strength, and capability to lead our country at this time. Those are the issues that Canadians are looking for. And I don't think it's a partisan issue. People in Don Valley West, my riding in Toronto, are looking for competence and a leader they can trust. Mark Carney's a banker, and by instinct, he understands compliance. He understands disclosure. He understands what he needs to do. I have absolutely no doubts about his ethics. I have no doubt about his compliance. I have no doubt about the confidence Canadians will have in him. In my riding, I am finding people from the far left to the far right and everything in between are looking at him and saying, this is the leader we want, someone who will unite, not divide, someone who will inspire, who will have confidence, and will take us one step at a time through a very treacherous period in Canadian history. That's not Pierre Poilievre. It simply is not. Right. This is the man that I think we need at this time, and I think we'll see it. And it's going to be an interesting election. Pierre Poilievre has to retool. He has to figure out what he's doing, because we don't even know who he is or what he's about, other than the fact he didn't like Justin Trudeau. He didn't want a carbon tax. Right now, we have someone who is going to steer the ship and keep us going and make sure that Canada from coast to coast to coast stays united and sovereign. This is about our independence. This is the stakes are high, and nobody's going to trust Pierre Poilievre. They're going to trust Mark Carney.
Okay, the stakes are high. The time is short. I literally have 30 seconds, so I just want a quick yes/no from either of you. He is going to be Prime Minister. He does not have a seat in the House of Commons. No one has ever been Prime Minister without ever having been elected. John Turner was Prime Minister without a seat at the time, but he'd been an MP in the past. We've heard that he has asked Jean Charest to join the cabinet without being elected, and that has been turned down. My colleague Louis Blouin is reporting that. All of this suggests to me the need to go to the polls fast. So, Rob Oliphant, do you think Parliament will come back on the 24th, or do you think we're into an election before then?
Let's just say my signs are ready. We have a campaign office. My volunteers are pumped, and we're ready to go. I think we need an election quickly, and Canadians need to say we will elect Mark Carney as an MP and as the Prime Minister.
Sophie Chatel?
Oh, I'm ready.
So
Same.
you guys
Yes.
want an election now. This is different than before.
I hope
You
to
think
have
so?
an election, and what's important is that we have a strong team to face the challenges that we'll need to face as a country. So get an election, get a strong government, a strong message, united to face Trump.
Okay, and Wayne Long, you're going to be on that team, right? After saying you weren't going to run, you're back in the saddle, you're going to be part of this. And do you think Parliament comes back, or do you think it's off to the races?
It's off to the races. I mean, look, in the end, elections are job interviews, right? Canadians can interview both of these candidates, make a decision between Pierre Poilievre's negative policies, Mark Carney's positive vision for the future. Let Canadians decide, and I'm ready to go.
Okay, and we've got to let you go because we are out of time. I want to thank you all for being here. Sophie Chatel, Rob Oliphant, and Wayne Long. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
I feel like everything in my life has helped prepare me for this moment. I do care about the economy, but it's not because I'm an economist. It's because I care about people. That's why I'm a Liberal. That's why we are Liberals.
Well, and those Liberals have chosen Mark Carney as their new party leader and Canada's next Prime Minister, and it was a landslide victory. Carney got 85.9% of the points on the first count, dominating. He won all 343 ridings. That includes in University Rosedale, Chrystia Freeland's riding, where Carney got 83% of the points, Freeland got 11.8%. And in Burlington, Karina Gould's riding, where Carney got 76% of the points, Gould got 17.6%. Today, Carney, the Prime Minister-designate, met with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and with the Liberal caucus as Carney's transition to power officially begins.
Just had a long meeting with the Prime Minister. We discussed the most important issues for our country, obviously including Canada and U.S. relations, issues of national security, and yes, the transition between the Prime Minister and myself. That transition will be seamless and it will be quick.
So Carney says that transition will be quick, but just how quickly will he send the country into an election?
A new era is starting. We now have a new leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, a new Prime Minister, and I think we can be confident for the next steps.
I am ready for an election in Beaches East York, and I think we got a fair fighting chance now.
Now that we have a new leader, people are going to be excited to run for us, so I don't have any worries about us finding excellent candidates for the upcoming election.
What we're seeing now is an opportunity for us to go forward and ask Canadians with sincerity, with authenticity, with humility for their support.
I'm very excited about hearing from our new leader, Mark, and I'm excited about us winning the next election.
So Liberals have overwhelmingly chosen Mark Carney. Will they be able to get Canadians to choose him as well? Let's bring in the power panel on that. Lisa Raitt is a former Conservative cabinet minister. Brad Levine is a former national campaign director for the NDP. And here with me in studio, Vandana Cotter was an advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Rob Russo is the Canada correspondent for The Economist. Good to see you all. Happy Monday. Vandana, what does that margin and the calendar tell us about how quickly we're going to be in an election? I hear voting day is April 28th if everything goes to plan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you for that. No,
I would say you're looking at probably just a couple weeks. I think he's going to get some ducks in order for his transition time. I think it's important for him to be briefed up on what's happening, especially given what's happening across the border. I don't think you'll see a huge change in cabinet, but I think he will want to be properly briefed. But I think he has been clear he wants a mandate from Canadians, and I think he's confident he'll get that.
Okay, so Lisa, he's got to move pretty fast, right? He's got to staff up the PMO. He's got to figure out a cabinet. All of that's apparently going to be done maybe by the end of this week. And then the window we hear is somewhere between the 19th and the 23rd. It's the dissolution of Parliament and off to the races.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I heard as early as April 22nd for a possible date. You never know after that long weekend in April. Mr. Carney said that it's going to be seamless and quick. And I would say, not with a lot of tongue in cheek, but I would say, well, of course it's going to be seamless and quick because it's the same cast of characters. I mean, what really is there changing from the cabinet that is in place today and the cabinet that will be in place with Mr. Carney? Even Mr. Mendocino coming in as chief of staff is very clearly a sign to Canadians that, hey, look, it's the same folks, the same people who were in charge of the decisions that you may not have liked. Well, they're back and they're going to be working with Mr. Carney. So I find it interesting, and I find it implausible that it's going to be easy for the Liberals to put distance between Mr. Carney and Mr. Trudeau, and the Conservatives will work double time to make sure that there is no space between the two. In fact, it will be seamless.
Rob, what do you make of the Marco Mendocino pick? It's a transition role, as we understand it. I don't know if it would be a forever role as long as Carney is in there, because we all think Marco Mendocino wants to run to be the mayor of Toronto. So, that would get in the way. So, I mean, what do you make of this? Because when he was dropped from cabinet, and there's not a great affection, seemingly, with a lot of the PMO because of that. I mean, what do you make of this move?
I could tell you Liberal MPs were surprised.
Yeah.
They were surprised when he popped up. And I think it's I think you're right, too, in that he did not have a peaceful parting with the Prime Minister.
No.
And he was one of the first people who went to the PMO and the Prime Minister and kept telling them what he was hearing at the door in the spring and summer of 2023 when things were beginning to go badly. I listened to Mark Carney's speech last night. I was in the room. I counted up until 6, and then I stopped counting. That half a dozen times he mentioned the word change. So he knows that this is a change election. He's got somebody there who doesn't necessarily represent change in Mr. Mendocino, but does represent what I think he's trying to do with the current iteration of the Liberal Party before he begins to change it. The word I heard was amicable divorce.
Right.
He wants to try to effect an amicable divorce between his version of the party and those who are currently running the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister's operation, because he still needs them. That's a really tough thing for a change candidate to do, but that's what they're trying to do. It was no mistake when he said very clearly, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the carbon tax, an effort to change. And I'm going to cancel the capital gains tax. I know he said that during the campaign. Yep. So did he have to say it again? Yes, he did, in order to try and draw that demarcation.
Well, April 1 is tariff day is April 2. Carbon tax increase is April 1. And Brad, just an idea of how amicable this divorce is. We're getting notes from our reporters up at the cabinet breakup. The meeting is breaking up, not cabinet. Stephen Guilbeault just said, we're looking at ways to kill the consumer carbon tax as soon as possible.
Unbelievable.
And that's just the moment we are in. So take it away, Brad.
Yeah, brutal. Yeah, that's a soft underhand pitch there. Thanks, David. How much time do we have? No, just incredible. Just incredible. But, a few things that Carney can do with the cabinet, even though the players obviously are the same because he's got to draw from the same, is, reducing the sizes of the cabinet. cabinet has been one of the things that he has signaled. That will send a signal to Canadians that maybe he's a bit more focused and a little bit more tighter of a team. So I think there's still some things that he can do. Just on the notion of the amicable divorce. Yesterday, during his acceptance speech there in front of Liberals, and I know that you and Rosie and others, David, were commenting that when Mr. Carney mentioned that he would not proceed with the increase and he would get rid of the capital gains tax changes that Trudeau was going to do, the whole room erupted in applause. Yeah. These were hallmark policies of the Trudeau administration, and yet it was the hardcore Liberal base in the room at the time that were cheering loudly over that. Wasn't Trudeau didn't clap at that, but everyone around him were clapping. I think that these policies, I think most Liberals, if the cues that we can take from those in the room are any indication that these are policies that the Liberals would easily throw aside in an effort to make themselves more palatable. Now, again, I'll share with you, David, that this is consistent with decades, if not centuries, of Liberal Party posturing, where they'll claim that a particular policy is the most important thing ever, yet they will throw it out in a heartbeat. And if you don't like these policies, these values, I've got other values that you'll also may appreciate better. So classic liberalism.
Well, maybe this is why they've ruled the country for longer than anybody in its history, right? Because, they go to where the electorate goes, right? Because I tell you, Brad, I was struck by that too. Watching Liberals, they have for years, stand and applauded the creation and the increase of the carbon tax that now standing and applauding the end of the carbon tax. It just shows sort of the flexibility on these things to respond to where the electorate is. The other bit of flexibility, as Carney is working on his cabinet, Louis Blouin and others, we're all hearing Jean Charest was offered a cabinet post, said no. Christy Clark being contemplated for a cabinet post, don't know. What does that say about where this government's head is going to be when they are officially sworn in, that they're looking outside the elected members of the parliament to build a cabinet to deal with things and then go into a quick election?
It means that, contrary to what Conservatives want to say, that there is going to be change. And I think that means a refresh sometimes of cabinet. Not fully everyone. I think there are some important people in important roles right now, like Dominic LeBlanc and Melanie Joly, who have strong relationships across the border. But if you want to bring in people with business acumen, people with strong experience, that kind of showcase the table and more in the view of what Mr. Carney has values for, they're going to make those shifts. And I think also including how they staff up the PMO. And you can say what you want on Marco Mendicino, like there are things that he brings to the table. He will already have, unlike Mr. Poilievre, pre-existing security clearance. He's fluently bilingual. But also, Mr. Carney is a bit more, he's not the same as Mr. Trudeau. He's a bit more conservative. Mr. Mendicino is well liked amongst staff and caucus. So if you want to send a signal, someone with strong emotional intelligence, why wouldn't you put someone in there, especially if it's a transition, right? Right. But a signal will definitely be like, yes, it's the same party, but this will be made in the values and how Mr. Carney kind of views his vision. So
Lisa, the charitable description of the pivots on all of the policies is that they're responding to the changing mood in the country. The less charitable is that this is cynical opportunism, that they've got to do it because their careers are on the line. I don't know how you define it. How do you think voters will react to it? Do they care that there may be hypocrisy and self-interest here as long as the things they didn't like go away?
Well, we're going to find out. But I think the other way of characterizing it is that they're taking the advice of Pierre Poilievre over that of Mark Carney, because Mark Carney at the beginning was saying, let's go carbon tax, and didn't say anything against the capital gains tax. Yet it was Pierre Poilievre who's actually bringing to the attention of Canadians the difficulties with these and bringing the voice of Canadians to Parliament and questioning the government on it. And now they have found religion and they are going in that direction, and they all stood up and applauded it. So you're being, I think, quite generous in how you describe it. Other people would have a different word than hypocrite, but it's for them. But I do want to, I need to address one thing. I know Vandana brought up this security clearance thing. I think as well, you're going to hear a lot about the ethics questions around Mark Carney and whether or not he's disclosing his financial holdings. The piece that bothers me that is missing, the reason why members of parliament or office holders disclose what they have in their portfolios is to set the baseline to ensure that there's no insider trading on information you may receive as an MP. That's the piece that's missing. It's not about what he's holding stock in. Other people may care about that. What I want to know and what I'd like to track is that nobody's making money off of decisions that he's privy to that no one else is. And he's not giving us that baseline right now.
Okay, so on that, I mean, I don't know what Mark Carney is going to do, but Lisa, like, you've been in cabinet and you've dealt with this. I do not own enough to worry about divestment and blind trusts, right? But like, if he were to come out today or tomorrow and like, I've got everything in a blind trust, I'm already in compliance. It's with the ethics commissioner on, before he's is that good enough? Do you think that meets the standard?
I'm satisfied.
You're satisfied?
I'm satisfied with that as a former MP. Listen, my husband was caught up in this, and he was told that he was not allowed to trade any of his stock, and that was like for 7.5 years.
Right.
And it should be the same for Mark Carney. It should be the same for his wife. It should be the same for any of them. No one should take advantage of the information that they're privy to in order to make trades. And the only way to ensure that is by disclosing everything. And if he wants to blind trust it, he can, but definitely disclosure has to happen.
I mean, as I read the ethics rules, is that if you're a cabinet minister or you have to divest either by selling everything that the ethics commissioner says is a conflict, or by putting it in a blind trust, and that because that constitutes divestment under the rules. So if he accelerates that and goes there right away, problem solved, do you think, Lisa, or still a problem? I don't know.
He's got to do it right now. Like he made a joke about it last night, and I didn't appreciate that either, because there's very real reasons why we track it. We are different from the United States, where certain members of Congress end up, multi-hundred millionaires as a result of the information that they use. Yeah. We don't play that game in Canada.
They're legally protected from insider trading in Congress and Senate. It's a totally, I don't know how it's allowed to exist, right?
Should be.
Yeah.
We've got our measures. That's what it is.
Okay. All right. So, Rob, what do you think of this? Because this is the attack, right? That there's two attacks. That he relocated Brookfield to New York, and that cost jobs, though the job loss numbers aren't clear, and this was an attempt to get into American investments, and that you can't trust the guy to negotiate with the U.S. because we don't know what he owns, and those interests can be used against him. If he does the blind trust issue, if he divests that way, does that put this issue to bed for Mark Carney for the election campaign? I don't know.
I would be shocked, totally shocked, if that put the issue to rest. Look, Mark Carney made a lot of money. He worked for Goldman Sachs for a long, long time. If he discloses everything and he tells us how much money he has, I would be stunned if the Conservatives didn't try to draw a portrait of Mr. Carney as somebody who is distant from the rest of us, because the truth is, he is.
Sure.
As the son of a bricklayer, I can't conceive of the kinds of money that he made. That being said, in an age of rampaging populism, that would normally be a huge, huge handicap. We are in a different age now. It seems, as we've been saying, the tectonic plates have shifted, and some people actually want somebody who's worked those halls of power, who understands the economy, who knows how to pull the big levers on the big market machines. So I expect the Conservatives to try and make hay with that. I would be doing the same thing if I were in their shoes, but I'm not sure that is the kind of thing that plays anymore. I'm not sure we're in an era of rampaging populism at this moment.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that
the moment is moving. I don't know what the moment is. You want to quickly jump in there, Vonda?
I think, and I get Rob's point. I would just say that the difference with him is that he doesn't have this long time dynastic intergenerational wealth, right? He was the son of teachers who worked hard, got a scholarship, and you want that for your kids. You want that. That's why people come to Canada. You want to be able to be successful no matter what your parents did.
Sure.
And I think that's a story that people can understand from him. And I think because he has that background, it's not the same. I know people try and paint him as someone who is too far away from everyday ideals as Canadians, but he dealt with that. Like his kitchen table story about being with his family and going to church on Sundays, that resonates with a lot of people. So I think as much as that's a good attack, and they'll find, if this doesn't stick, they'll find something else. Like I will never underestimate Conservatives' ability to find something to keep throwing at the wall.
No, I have no doubt they'll just say, oh, well, it's all over.
Yes.
Issue solved.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I'm going to get to Brad in just a second, but first, as Mark Carney prepares to take power, I wanted to show you a moment today that was caught by Reuters. This is an interesting photo. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau leaving the chamber of the House of Commons today, and that's the chair he sits on inside the House of Commons. Saving the furniture, I don't know, by leaving, but he gets to take that with him as he will soon be leaving Parliament. As Justin Trudeau leaves, the focus is on Mark Carney, and the opposition leaders were out today reacting to Mark Carney's leadership victory, and they did not hold back with their criticism of the new leader or their calls for a federal election. Take a listen.
Let us be very clear about Mark Carney. What he wants to do is not put you and your family first.
He's just like Justin, and he's more of the same. We have the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal advisors, the same Liberal promises, who will produce the same Liberal results.
If Mr. Carney was to start an election in the coming minute, let's wait. We're ready. Let's go.
All right, Brad, pick up on this. What do you make of these attacks? What do you make of the disclosure calls? What do you make of the allegations you can't trust Mark Carney because he might be rich?
Yeah, as opposed to Justin Trudeau, who is also wealthy. His father was wealthy. Mr. Mulroney was wealthy. Canadians have elected a handful of very wealthy people to the chair of the Prime Minister. That's not going to be the problem. I think that just on the Carney disclosure, and certainly I will agree with the sentiments here that in order for him to put his opponent's issues to bed, he's going to have to come clean before the swearing in terms of blind trust. As long as he meets that minimum bar, then it's going to be, I think, hard. Most Canadians are going to wonder if he doesn't do at least some things in the right direction in terms of the disclosure. I think that, so that's first and foremost. Secondly, I don't know during these times whether or not his wealth and his association with the financial sector that has been the root of many suffering in the last couple of decades, the housing crisis in the States that led to, of course, the global financial crisis in 07 and 08. I don't know if there is, and I will wait and see, I'm not rendering an opinion necessarily, but whether or not that during this election time, that is enough to disqualify him from those Canadians who are afraid of Pierre Poilievre. That is, I think that the conditions within this election will be fundamentally different from 2021 and 2019 and 2015 in that Poilievre is not Scheer and is certainly not O'Toole in terms of the Conservatives. And I think that if you look at the public domain polls in the last handful of weeks, the minute that Trudeau resigned, we noticed that a lot of those that were siding with the Conservatives and Poilievre in the public domain polls weren't there supporting his objectives, his campaign, necessarily. They were there because they couldn't stand Trudeau anymore. The minute that he left, we saw some change, and we'll see over the next 72 hours and a handful of days whether or not this is the Carney factor and whether or not that gap between the Conservatives and the Liberals will continue to close. If that is the case, then we are going to have a street fight. The challenge for Mr. Singh and the New Democrats is to hold on to the high teens and do better than that. Right now, the public domain polls has them at, and I hate to see this, but in some dire straits. The pollsters are ringing the bell in terms of what this means for the NDP. We're seeing New Democrats flee to Carney in an effort to stave off a Poilievre government. How you get that back? You can attack Carney, and I think Singh was on the trail there, on the path there, better than I think Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Poilievre's critique. In that, is this man in touch with you and your family on day-to-day issues? And I think that could be some solid ground for the NDP to take in terms of I wouldn't worry about the details, but just the general. Does this man have your back? Certainly Poilievre doesn't, but does Carney have your back? And because he's moving the party to the right, he's creating, I think, some space in the center. If Singh can tap into that, then I think Singh can save a lot of his caucus going forward.
Look, this is Singh's third election, so that, and this is really about who do you want sitting across the table with Donald Trump at this moment. So it's going to be that's a tough one for the NDP and a tough one for the Bloc. I mean, that's what we're seeing in the dynamic. And Lisa, look, I don't know. If this is a sugar rush, the post-Justin Trudeau infatuation with Mark Carney thing. And it's tough here in the Ottawa bubble to know. So I always call people back in St. John's and ask, what's happening back there. And I look at Seamus O'Regan's seat, because that was the riding where I lived. They couldn't find a candidate. Now they're like 5 and 6 deep. They're coming out of the woodwork. And people who are like legit, are showing up to run. It's mobilizing at that level, which changes the dynamic of the election from what we thought we'd see in December.
Yeah. And it must feel great for the Liberals right now. I mean, Anita Anand was retired and now she's unretired. And I get a lot of it has to do with the fact that they see a leader that has a possibility of winning. But, you know, up until this moment, David, it's really been the resume of Mark Carney that's been running. It hasn't been the man, Mark Carney. And he's going to have to run now. And he's going to have to do interviews and he's going to have to do debates. And it'll be interesting. And David, you said something that the Prime Minister gets to take the chair with him. He doesn't. He gets to pay for the chair.
Yes.
He wants to have it. He doesn't get to take it with him. So be careful around whether or not. I didn't get to take my chair with me. I had to buy my chair. And it was sent to me. But I don't have to. You're not allowed to pick it up. And by the way, those chairs are heavy. So he was very strong.
Well, look, we're the same age. I mean, I know he looks a lot older than me, but I think he's in pretty good shape. But yes, thank you for the fact check there, Lisa. That is very important. I did not want to accuse the Prime Minister of theft.
I'm saving you. Yeah, I'm saving you some mail that'll come into you later.
Look, we're still going to get him, Lisa. Don't worry about it. There's nothing I can do on a daily basis. But Vandana, Lisa does make the point that has been the Mark Carney resume, the idea of Mark Carney that has been out there. He certainly convinced the Liberals. I mean, he has not done a tremendous amount of Canadian interviews. He hasn't done debates in hostile territory with hostile players. I mean, what are the big tests and challenges he faces in the weeks ahead here?
I think it'll just be running against Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, Frank Bailey is going to be different than running against Pierre Poilievre. What's going to happen with his first real attack, connecting with Canadians, really showcasing that side of himself, even just political events, rallies, how he does with the pace of the day, that's going to be really important. I think he's gotten a taste of it. Certainly his campaign did a great job with visuals. I think he had a robust itinerary every day, but it's going to go up tenfold. Right? So I think that's still untested. I think he knows what's coming, though, so I think he's still preparing for it. He will also just be himself. He's not going to try and be the Prime Minister. He'll do it in his way, and I think it'll be up to Canadians to respond. But I think so far he's doing a good job in terms of doing that. I've seen him do the rally circuit. I've seen him being bombarded by people, and I've seen how Ignatieff dealt with that, and I see how Carney dealt with that. And Mr. Carney actually really enjoys speaking to people. So I think those will be some issues that test him, but also to his team when the first hit comes and it penetrates. How do you react? That's going to be a key test.
Well, and this financial issue could be the thing, right? But Rob, I wonder. To Brad's point, the NDP with the contrast. Does this guy get you? Is he relatable? I mean, I don't know if that's what it's going to be. Is it going to be, do I count on him to get the job done? And he is sort of pitching himself as an economically focused Liberal, but social policy, social justice, climate still at the core. I mean, what's the audience for that? How do you think it plays?
Well, the audience is, if things go according to his plan, and if we listen to the speech he made last night, I timed it a little bit. More of his time on attack was spent attacking Donald Trump. Than Pierre Poilievre. If that remains the case, he's going to be running, in essence, Doug Ford's campaign, right?
With a Stephen Harper vibe? Is it that kind of a thing? Sort of a lower key,
Yeah. I mean, that's the echoes that I got. He has to be aware, and it sounds like he is aware of the fact that in a change election, the number one issue remains cost of living and affordability. He has to give people hope. The first people he had to give hope to today were in that caucus. And not all of them were convinced about Mark Carney 7 or 8 weeks ago. Today, they feel pretty good. They feel like the pressure is off and now they're in the game. He was also a little bit looser. He went up to Brenda Shanahan, the chair of the caucus, and said, maybe now you'll return my calls.
Because she was neutral in this. Yeah.
That's right. And some other things like so. First test passed. Now he has a larger test. Vanden is right. What's going to happen when somebody wheels and slams him between the eyes? Is he going to be able to get up and counterpunch? Because he's up against the brawler.
Yeah, and he was a hockey goalie, and they get protected inside that crease. Yeah. He's now out skating with the forwards and the defensemen, and there's not going to be any compliments like there were in the Liberal debates. It's going to be more aggressive all the time.
And the number one issue remains cost of living and affordability. Right. Trump may change that.
Okay, and Lisa, I wanted to ask you on that, just as a last point. I spoke to a conservative today who's worked on campaigns and said, as long as cost of living remains the top issue, the Conservatives are in pretty good shape, and it's their election to win. If Trump becomes the number one issue ahead of cost of living, a little bit more challenging for them. You agree with that kind of analysis, that if the Trump issue becomes the top issue in all the polling, it's a better path for Mark Carney than if it's a cost of living election?
I think what your conservative friend is expressing is the fact that nobody has a friggin' idea of what's going to happen if Trump becomes the actual. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
Who knows? If we're in such bad shape that this is all about who is the meanest to Trump, boy, our country needs a lot more help in terms of figuring out what we should be voting around. So he could be right. The individual could be right. They could be dead wrong. But the reality is, I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up 2025. I don't think anybody knows, you know. I think we'll have to leave it there. I know we're out of time, so I got to say goodbye. I think we'll be talking about the Prime Minister and the Cabinet a week from now. Lisa Raitt, Brad Levine, Vandana Cutter, Rob Russo, always appreciate it. Thank you so much.